She lost her mother, was forgotten by her father, and rejected by her new family. Kicked out of her home with a torn suitcase and a broken heart, everything seemed lost. Until a common man, with an old pain in his eyes, decided to take her in. If this beautiful story of resilience and love has captured your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. Continuing now. Sophia was just 6 years old when her life began to crumble. The only daughter of businessman Marcus Harrington, one of the most influential men in London, she had lost her mother, Claire, little more than a month ago. The grief was still an open wound, but her father seemed determined to move on, as if the past could simply be filed away, along with the documents of his millionaire businesses. The mansion in Belgravia, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the capital city, was too immense for a small girl. Sophia wandered through the marble corridors, clutching her faded teddy bear, a gift from her mother on her last birthday. The household staff looked at her with pity, but no one knew how to comfort a child who had lost her anchor in the world. One autumn afternoon, while Marcus was in Washington, D.C. closing government contracts, Sophia heard the rumble of an imported car engine coming up the driveway that led to the mansion. She ran to the library window, hopeful it was her father returning earlier than expected, but it wasn't him. From the red convertible stepped an elegant woman, with impeccably straightened black hair and high heels that made a rhythmic sound on the gravel path. Beside her, a girl of about 12 walked with her chin held high, as if she already knew the place. Sophia felt a tightening in her chest without understanding why. "Mrs. Lillian and young Isabella have arrived," announced Mrs. Jenkins, the housekeeper, who had looked after the house for over 20 years. Her tone of voice carried a veiled warning, a concern that Sophia was too young to decipher. "Who are they, Mrs. Jenkins?" The lady hesitated, adjusting her apron as she did when she was nervous. "They are your father's guests, dear. Didn't he tell you? They'll be staying with us for a few days." But it wasn't just a few days. The following week, when Marcus returned from his trip, he delivered the news as casually as commenting on the weather. Lillian and Isabella would be moving in with them. "Lillian is special to me, Sophia, and Isabella will be like a sister to you. Isn't that wonderful?" There was nothing wonderful in Lillian's cold eyes when Marcus wasn't looking, nor in Isabella's malicious smile when she accidentally knocked over the photo frame with Claire's picture. "Oops, it was so old and dusty," the older girl said with feigned innocence. The first few days were filled with silent tension. Lillian, a former model and cosmetics entrepreneur, knew exactly how to charm Marcus. She was sweet and attentive when he was around, suggesting family outings and activities that would bring the girls closer. But as soon as Marcus left for another of his frequent business trips, the true Lillian would emerge. "Sophia, darling, don't you think you're a bit too old to be carrying that grubby bear everywhere? What will your father's friends say when they visit? They'll think we haven't taught you manners," Lillian commented during breakfast, 3 weeks after her official arrival. "But it was a gift from my mother," Sophia murmured, clutching her bear Tobias. To her chest, "Your mother isn't here anymore, sweetie, and now I'm the one who runs this house." Lillian's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Isabella never carried toys in public after she was 5. Did you, darling?" Isabella, who was greedily devouring a croissant, nodded superiorly. "Toys are for babies. And that bear smells of mold." Sophia swallowed her tears. She learned at that moment that showing weakness would only give those two more power. She ate in silence, while Lillian and Isabella chatted animatedly about the renovations they would make to the room that had once belonged to Claire and Marcus. That decor was so tacky, wasn't it? Looked like something out of a cheap TV drama. Gradually, the changes intensified. First, it was Claire's personal belongings, discreetly removed from common areas. Then came the alterations to the routine. Sophia was served after everyone else at dinner. Her ballet lessons, which she loved so much, were cancelled because they clashed with Isabella's tennis lessons. Her drawings were removed from the refrigerator door because they made the kitchen look messy. When Marcus was home, Lillian transformed herself. She asked Sophia to sit next to her, complimented her curly brown hair, the same hair she called a disheveled mane when they were alone, and spoke with false enthusiasm about the progress the girl was making at school. But Sophia noticed that her father no longer looked her in the eyes as before. There seemed to be a pane of glass between them, a distance that grew each day. Marcus was always on the phone, always worried about the stock market, always answering some urgent call, even when he promised to spend the day with his daughter. On a cold London winter night, Sophia woke up from a nightmare. She had dreamed of her mother, who smiled from afar but couldn't reach her. Frightened, the girl decided to look for her father, something she hadn't done since Lillian arrived. She tiptoed downstairs, clutching Tobias, heading for the study where Marcus often worked late. The door was ajar, a sliver of light escaping into the corridor. Sophia approached and heard Lillian's voice, low and controlled. "Marcus, we need to talk about Sophia. She's having trouble adapting to our new family. The school psychologist called me today." Sophia froze. There was no psychologist at her school. And no one had talked to her about adaptation problems. What's happened now? Marcus's voice sounded tired, as if this wasn't the first conversation of its kind. "She's been exhibiting regressive behaviors. The teacher told me she cries in corners, doesn't interact with her classmates. And that bear, Marcus. It's not healthy for a child her age to be so attached to an object. Dr. Evans suggested a boarding school in the Lake District. It's a wonderful place with comprehensive psychological support." "Boarding school? Don't you think that's a bit extreme?" Lillian sighed theatrically. "I didn't want to bring this up, but Sophia has been cruel to Isabella. The other day I found her cutting my daughter's bangs while she was asleep. And when confronted, she said it was Mommy in heaven who told her to." Sophia felt her blood run cold. It was a lie. She had never done such a thing. She wanted to go in and scream that Lillian was making up stories, but fear paralyzed her. "My God, I didn't realize it was that bad." Marcus's voice now carried genuine concern. "She needs professional help, darling. She's creating a parallel world where Claire still exists. It's understandable, of course, but we need to act before it becomes more serious. The boarding school can help her process her grief in a healthy way." Sophia couldn't listen anymore. She ran back to her room, tears silently streaming down her face. She understood now, even at 6 years old, that something terrible was happening. Lillian wanted to send her away and was using lies to convince her father. The next day during breakfast, Marcus looked at his daughter with an expression that mixed pity and distrust. Sophia tried to smile, but her lips trembled. Isabella, noticing the tension, nudged her friend Felicity, who had slept over at the mansion, and both whispered as they chuckled softly, looking at Sophia. "Daddy, can I sit on your lap?" Sophia asked in a last attempt at reconnection. Before Marcus could answer, Lillian gently intervened. "Darling, your father is having breakfast. Don't you see you'll get his suit dirty? Besides, young ladies your age don't sit on laps. Do they, Isabella?" "I stopped sitting on laps when I was 4, the older girl replied disdainfully. Marcus checked his watch. "I have to go. I have a video conference with the Chinese in 20 minutes. He stood up hurriedly, gave Sophia a distant kiss on the forehead and a longer one to Lillian. "We'll talk tonight about that matter," he murmured to the woman, thinking Sophia wouldn't hear, but she heard, and she knew at that moment that her days in the mansion were numbered. The days that followed were marked by increasing tension in the Harrington mansion. Sophia noticed the exchanged glances between Lillian and her father, the conversations that ceased when she entered a room, the mysterious phone calls to the supposed boarding school in the Lake District. She tried to be sweeter, more obedient, less present, anything that might please her stepmother and make her father look at her again with the affection he once had. "Maybe if I'm more like Isabella," Sophia thought one rainy afternoon, as she watched the other girl receive compliments from Lillian for her piano recital for her mother's friends. Sophia had never had piano lessons. Her mother believed she should choose her own passions when she was ready. Claire preferred to take her to the park, teach her to recognize birds, tell her stories about constellations. Memories that now seemed to belong to another life. It was that same night that Sophia overheard the final plans being made. Marcus would leave the next morning for Edinburgh, where he would finalize a strategic partnership with an Edinburgh construction company. He would be away for at least 3 days. "It's the perfect opportunity," Lillian said as she applied her night cream in front of the mirror in the room she now shared with Marcus. "I've already spoken with the school in the Lake District. They can take her tomorrow as a special case. When you return, Sophia will already be settled in, and it will have been easier for everyone." Sophia, who had gotten up to get water, froze in the dark hallway. Her heart was beating so fast she was sure she would be discovered. "I don't know, Lillian. So suddenly. Shouldn't we prepare her?" "Marcus, the more preparation, the more drama. Dr. Evans said that clean breaks are better for children with insecure attachment. Besides, you yourself said you can't stand her crying fits at night anymore. Think of how good it will be for all of us to have some peace." There was a long pause before Marcus replied, "All right, if you think it's best for Sophia, I trust you." Sophia felt her legs weaken. Her own father was agreeing to send her away, like someone dispatching an unwanted package. She returned to her room without a sound, clutched Tobias, and cried softly until she fell asleep. The next morning, Marcus left early, only stopping to give Sophia a quick kiss, who pretended to still be asleep. She couldn't look at him without falling apart. When the door closed and the sound of the car faded into the distance, Sophia felt an immense emptiness, as if something beyond her father was leaving forever. Breakfast was silent. Lillian seemed strangely animated, while Isabella cast triumphant glances at Sophia. "I'm going out with my friends today," the older girl announced. "Can we go to the mall later, Mum?" "Of course, darling. In fact, we can turn Sophia's room into your music room when we get back. What do you think?" Isabella clapped her hands, excited. "Can I choose the wall color? I want something modern, not that awful baby pink." Sophia pushed her plate away, her appetite completely lost. "Can I go play in the garden?" Lillian waved distractedly. "Go, but don't get dirty. We have an engagement later." The garden had always been Sophia's refuge. Claire had planted jasmine and trumpet trees, created wildflower beds, and installed a swing under the shade of an old mango tree. It was there that Sophia felt closest to her mother. She sat on the swing, clutching Tobias to her chest, and tried to imagine where she would be taken. She had never been to the Lake District, but she knew it was far and cold. "Will I be able to take Tobias?" she murmured to herself, swinging lightly. "Talking to yourself, little Sophia? First sign of madness." Isabella had approached without Sophia noticing. She was accompanied by Felicity, her inseparable friend who lived on the same street. Both wore matching outfits and looked at Sophia with cruel amusement. "Leave me alone, Isabella." "Oh, how rude." "See, Felicity? That's why she's going to the special school. Mum said it's for children who don't know how to behave." Sophia felt her face burn. "It's not a special school. It's a boarding school." Isabella raised her eyebrows in feigned surprise. "So you already know?" "Mum said it was supposed to be a surprise." She laughed, a high-pitched, malicious sound. "But you know what's best? You're never coming back. Daddy Marcus promised Mum that afterward, we're moving to a new house, just the three of us. A real family." "You're lying!" Sophia shouted, jumping off the swing. "My father would never do that." "Oh no? Then why did he agree to send you far away? He doesn't even like you anymore, everyone can tell. You just remind him of your dead mother." Sophia lunged at Isabella with all the strength her small arms allowed, pushing her to the ground. Felicity screamed for help, while Isabella began to cry, but a calculated, exaggerated cry, one made to attract adult attention. It wasn't long before Lillian appeared running into the garden. Seeing her daughter on the ground, her new dress stained with grass, her face contorted in fury. "What did you do, you savage?" "She attacked me, Mum. Out of nowhere. I was just being nice." Isabella sobbed while Felicity nodded vehemently. Lillian grabbed Sophia's arm tightly, dragging her into the house. "That's enough. God knows I tried to be patient with you, but this is the limit." Inside the kitchen, Mrs. Jenkins and Rita, the cook, watched the scene with wide eyes. "Mrs. Lillian, what happened?" the housekeeper asked, alarmed by the force with which her employer held the girl. "This ungrateful little girl attacked my daughter, after everything we've done for her." Lillian trembled with rage, but there was something else in her eyes, a kind of satisfaction, as if she finally had the excuse she needed. Rita called the driver. "Change of plans. Sophia is leaving right now." Mrs. Jenkins stepped forward. "But Mrs. Lillian, Mr. Harrington..." "Mr. Harrington agreed to everything. It's for Sophia's own good. She's out of control." She turned to Sophia, bending down to look her in the eyes. "See what you've done? Now we have no choice. Sophia trembled, big tears streaming down her face. "I want my father. Please, Aunt Jenkins, call my father." "Your father is in a meeting, Sophia. He cannot be disturbed," Lillian cut in coldly. "Rita, pack some of her clothes. Just the essentials. Jenkins, help her." The two employees exchanged anguished glances, but dared not challenge the new lady of the house. Murmuring words of comfort to Sophia, they went upstairs to prepare her belongings. Meanwhile, Lillian locked Sophia in the study, ordering her to be quiet. Through the solid wooden door, Sophia heard Lillian on the phone, explaining to someone that there would be a change of plans. "Yes, we're taking her today. The situation has become untenable. She assaulted my daughter. No, he's traveling, but he agreed to everything. Of course, we'll sign the papers later." Time seemed to drag as Sophia waited, huddled in an armchair too big for her small body. When the door finally opened, it wasn't Lillian but Mrs. Jenkins carrying a worn suitcase and an expression of deep sorrow. "Come, my little one. Let's get you ready." The housekeeper's voice was choked. "I put on your warmest coat. The Lake District is cold at this time of year." "Mrs. Jenkins, please don't let her take me," Sophia pleaded, clinging to the lady's skirts. Jenkins knelt, adjusting the collar of Sophia's blouse. There were tears in her eyes. "My angel, I can't do anything, but I promise that as soon as your father returns, I will tell him everything properly. Everything will be all right, you'll see." She slipped something into Sophia's coat pocket. "I saved your father's number here. If you need to, call him." The sound of heels in the corridor announced Lillian's arrival. "Ready? The car is waiting." "Mrs. Lillian," Jenkins tried one last time. "Wouldn't it be better to wait for Mr. Harrington to return? He could say goodbye to the girl at least." "We've discussed this, Jenkins. It was his decision. Now, Sophia, let's go." "No more drama." Sophia cast one last pleading look at Mrs. Jenkins, but the housekeeper merely lowered her head, powerless. In the entrance hall, Isabella watched the scene with a thinly disguised smile. "Bye, little Sophia. Have a good trip." The driver, John, waited beside the car, visibly uncomfortable with the situation. "Mrs. Lillian, are you sure that—" "Get in the car, Sophia, now!" Lillian's voice brooked no argument. With a broken heart, Sophia obeyed. The journey through the city was a blur of tears and fear. At some point, the car stopped in front of a large iron gate. It wasn't a school as she expected, but it looked like some kind of institution. High walls, small windows. "Aren't we going to the Lake District?" Sophia asked, confused and terrified. "There's been a change of plans. This place is more suitable for cases like yours." Lillian smiled coldly. "John, get the suitcase." "But Mrs. Lillian—" "The girl—" John seemed genuinely disturbed. "The suitcase." "John, and wait in the car." Reluctantly, the driver obeyed, placing the small worn suitcase on the pavement. Sophia got out of the car, her legs trembling. Lillian rang the doorbell, and a middle-aged woman dressed in a white uniform appeared. "Mrs. Harrington? We're expecting her. Did you bring the documents?" "Here they are. Signed by the father." Lillian handed over a folder. "As agreed, total discretion. My husband will visit her when he returns from his trip." Sophia knew with the terrible certainty that only suffering children have that it was a lie. Her father didn't know where they were taking her. Perhaps he didn't even know she was leaving home that day. The woman in white gave Sophia a clinical look. "Come, dear. Let's go inside." Her voice was mechanical, devoid of any warmth. "I don't want to. Please, Aunt Lillian, don't leave me here." Sophia clung to the gate, desperate. But Lillian was already walking away, quickly returning to the car. Without a backward glance, without a word of farewell, she left, abandoning Sophia to the care of strangers, like an unwanted object. The woman in white tried to pull Sophia, but she clung to the gate with all her might. It was then that a different sound caught her attention. A car approaching, braking sharply. Sophia raised her tear-filled eyes and saw a man getting out of a black sedan in a hurry, his face a mask of indignation. "What is this nonsense? What are you doing with this child?" he thundered, advancing towards the gate. The woman in white recoiled, surprised. "Sir, this is a private admission. You cannot interfere." "I can and I will." The man approached Sophia, kneeling to her height. There was something familiar in his eyes, a kindness Sophia hadn't seen since her mother left. "You're Claire's daughter, aren't you?" "Sophia." Between sobs, Sophia nodded. "Did you know my mother?" The man smiled sadly. Yes, little one. I'm Robert Miller. Your mother and I grew up together in Cornwall. I came to pick you up at your house, but I saw when they left you here. He stood up, facing the woman in white. This is absurd. This girl has a father? The father authorized it, the woman defended herself, showing the documents. Everything is signed. Robert took the papers, examining them quickly, his face contorted in an expression of controlled fury. This is not Marcus Harrington's signature. I know it well. We did business in the past. He handed back the documents. You are being deceived, and I am taking this child with me right now. Sophia looked at Robert with renewed hope, but also with confusion. Who was this man who appeared like a guardian angel at the most desperate moment of her life? The woman in the white uniform seemed torn between following protocol and the conviction in Robert's words. Sir, I understand your concern, but we have procedures. I cannot simply hand over a child. Robert took a deep breath, maintaining his composure. Call Marcus Harrington now. Use my phone. I have his number. We cannot disturb him. We were informed he is in an important meeting. The woman consulted her notes. With Albuquerque Construction in Edinburgh. Exactly. And how do I know that? Because I know Marcus. Robert took his wallet from his pocket and handed a business card to the woman. I am a lawyer. I can assure you that what is happening here is at the very least legally questionable. If you prefer, we can resolve this at the nearest police station. The firmness in Robert's words and his elegant demeanor, despite the simplicity of his clothes, had the desired effect. The woman hesitated, looked again at the documents and then at Sophia, who remained clinging to the gate, her eyes red from crying. I'll make a call, she said finally, retreating into the building. Robert knelt again beside Sophia. Everything will be all right now, little one. I promise. Why did you come looking for me? Sophia asked, still distrustful despite the relief. Your mother was my best childhood friend. We grew up together in Cornwall, on a cobbled street near the quay. Our parents were friends. He smiled nostalgically. Claire always said that if anything ever happened to her, I should look out for you. It was a joke between us, of course. No one expects... He stopped himself, realizing he didn't need to complete the sentence. When I heard what happened, I tried to make contact, but your house seemed like a fortress. Today I finally got the address, and when I arrived, I saw you being put into a car. I followed you. Sophia wiped her tears with her coat sleeve. And my father doesn't know I'm here. Aunt Lillian lied to him. Robert nodded gravely. I imagined. I know this kind of situation. The woman returned with an embarrassed expression. I couldn't reach Mr. Harrington, but I spoke with my supervisor and, considering the circumstances, perhaps it's better to resolve this another way. I'm taking Sophia with me now, Robert said with determination, and I will contact Marcus directly. If he confirms that he wants his daughter to stay here, I will bring her back myself. The woman seemed relieved to be rid of the complicated situation. I'll need your full details and a liability waiver. No problem. While Robert filled out the necessary documents, Sophia remained by his side, clinging to her worn suitcase and to Tobias the bear, which she had hidden inside her coat. 20 minutes later, they were in Robert's car, driving away from that gloomy place. Where are we going? Sophia asked, still apprehensive. To my house in Hampstead. It's not a mansion like your father's, but it has plenty of space and a beautiful view of the city. Robert spoke naturally, as if taking a child he barely knew home was the most normal thing in the world. My housekeeper, Mrs. Nelson, will love meeting you. She complains the house is too quiet. The car drove along tree-lined avenues until they reached an elegant but discreet gated community. Robert's house, though not as opulent as the Harrington mansion, was spacious and welcoming. A modern two-story house with large windows and a small but well-kept garden. Mrs. Nelson, a grey-haired lady with an easy smile, came to greet them at the door. Her surprise at seeing Robert arrive with a child was momentary, soon replaced by a warm expression. "And who is this young lady?" she asked, bending slightly. "This is Sophia Harrington, Claire's daughter," Robert explained, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "She'll be staying with us for a while." Mrs. Nelson's eyes widened with recognition. "Claire's daughter? My goodness." She approached, studying Sophia's face. She has her mother's eyes, the same honey-colored eyes. Sophia felt a tightening in her chest. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken of her mother with such affection. She must be starving, poor thing. Let's go inside. I made cornmeal cake this morning. The house inside was as welcoming as it promised to be outside. Dark wood furniture, contrasted with light walls decorated with paintings of British landscapes. There was not the ostentatious luxury of the Harrington mansion, but every detail seemed designed to create comfort and coziness. Robert showed Sophia the room where she would stay, a spacious room with a single bed, a desk, bookshelves, and a large window overlooking the back garden, where a small cherry tree laden with fruit could be seen. It was my niece's room when she used to come spend holidays with me, Robert explained. She's at university now in Manchester. I think you'll like it. The bathroom is just there. Sophia placed her small suitcase on the bed, still assimilating the sudden change in her life. A few hours ago she was being abandoned in a strange place. Now she was in a cozy home with people who seemed genuinely to care about her. Can I call my father? She asked timidly. Robert nodded. Of course. We'll try after snack. But, Sophia, he might actually be in a meeting. If we can't reach him now, we'll try later, okay? During the snack, while Sophia nibbled on a piece of cornmeal cake with a cup of hot chocolate, Robert made several calls. First to Marcus without success, then to his office in Edinburgh, where he was informed that Marcus would be in consecutive meetings until the end of the day. Finally, he called the Harrington mansion. Harrington residence. Good morning, answered Mrs. Jenkins' voice. Good morning. This is Robert Miller, a family friend. I'd like to speak with Mrs. Lillian, please. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Miller, are you with Sophia? The housekeeper's voice was filled with contained emotion. Robert glanced at Sophia, who was eating her cake in silence. Yes, everything's fine. She's with me. An audible sigh of relief. Thank goodness. I was so worried. Mrs. Lillian said she was taking her to a boarding school, but something didn't seem right. It wasn't a school, Mrs. Jenkins. Robert kept his voice low. It was some kind of institution. I arrived in time. Sophia is safe with me now. That viper, the housekeeper murmured before controlling herself. Mr. Harrington knows nothing about this, I'm sure. He would never allow it. We need to speak with him urgently. Do you have a direct number? He only answers his private cell when he's in a meeting. But he returns tomorrow afternoon. If you could bring her back before... I won't bring her back while that woman is there, Robert interrupted firmly. I need to speak with Marcus first. Understand, Mrs. Jenkins, what happened today was serious. There was another moment of silence, and then the housekeeper spoke in a conspiratorial tone. I'll give you his personal secretary's number, Dr. Victoria. If anyone can reach him in an emergency, it's her. After writing down the number, Robert made another attempt. To his surprise, Victoria answered on the first ring. Dr. Robert Miller? Of course, I remember you. What can I do? It's about Marcus's daughter, Sophia. She's with me and we need to speak with him urgently. Sophia? But shouldn't she be... Victoria paused, confused. Wait, I'll check. Mr. Harrington is in a meeting with the Chinese now, but I can try an emergency message. Please, tell him it's about his daughter and that it's extremely urgent. Robert hung up and turned his attention to Sophia, who was watching everything with attentive eyes. Now we wait, he said with an encouraging smile. Mrs. Nelson had prepared the room for Sophia, placing clean towels and finding an old nightgown that had belonged to Robert's niece. It will do for now. Tomorrow we can see what else you need. It was still early, but the day's stress had exhausted Sophia. After a warm bath, she sat on the bed, clutching Tobias while Robert sat on the edge of the mattress. Are you calmer now? He asked. Sophia nodded. Thank you for getting me out of that place. No need to thank me. Your mother would have done the same for me. Robert hesitated, as if choosing his words. Sophia, you know your mother and I were very good friends, don't you? I promised her a long time ago that if one day she wasn't here anymore, I would look after you. I didn't imagine it would be necessary, of course. Why did you and my mother stop seeing each other? Sophia asked, curious about this friendship she didn't know about. Robert sighed. It's a long story. Let's just say your father and I had different views on business. He wanted your mother to stay away from me. Realizing he was treading on complex territory, he smiled. But that doesn't matter now. What matters is that I'm here to help. At that moment, Robert's phone rang. It was Victoria. Dr. Miller, Mr. Harrington will call you in 5 minutes, as soon as he can leave the meeting room. When the phone rang again, Robert answered and put it on speaker so Sophia could hear. Robert? What's this all about? Where's my daughter? Marcus's voice sounded tense, a mixture of confusion and concern. She's here with me, Marcus. She's safe. What the hell is she doing with you? Lillian told me Sophia was having problems at school and that they were visiting a child psychologist today. Robert glanced at Sophia before continuing. Marcus, your wife tried to institutionalize your daughter today. It wasn't a school nor a child psychologist, and from what I understand without your actual knowledge. What are you talking about? That's absurd! Marcus's voice rose an octave. Sophia is enrolled in the best school in London. What institution? Why don't you ask Sophia? There was a moment of silence, and then Marcus asked, his voice softer, Sophia, are you there, daughter? Daddy? Sophia's voice was choked. Aunt Lillian took me to an ugly place. It had bars and people in white. She said you had sent me. What? The disbelief in Marcus's voice was palpable. Sophia, is this true? I would never authorize such a thing. She forged your signature, Marcus, Robert intervened. I saw the documents. I know your signature. We did business in the past, remember? My God, Marcus seemed truly shocked. But why? It doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense if the goal is to get rid of Sophia, Robert replied firmly. Lillian seems determined to erase all traces of Claire from your life, and Sophia is the biggest one. The silence that followed was heavy. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was different, as if something had finally awakened within him. I'm taking the first flight tomorrow morning. I need to see my daughter. I need to understand what's happening. She's safe with me until then, Marcus. You have my word. When they hung up, Sophia looked at Robert with an expression that mixed relief and apprehension. My father believed me. Robert smiled, adjusting the blanket over her. Of course he believed you. You're his daughter, and despite everything, Marcus loves you, Sophia. He just got a little lost along the way. How did you meet my mother? Sophia asked, trying to keep her eyes open despite her tiredness. Ah, that's a story for another day. Robert turned off the bedside lamp, leaving only the soft light from the hallway to partially illuminate the room. Now rest. Tomorrow will be a new day. Sophia fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the day's events. In her dream, she was in a garden full of cherry trees, picking the black sweet fruits with her mother. And somehow Robert was there too, smiling, as if he had always been part of the landscape of her life. The morning brought a strange sensation to Sophia. For the first time in months, she had slept without nightmares. She woke up confused, trying to remember where she was until the events of the previous day came back to her memory, like puzzle pieces falling into place. The room bathed in the golden light of the rising sun seemed even more welcoming than the night before. Through the window, Sophia could see the back garden, where a hummingbird danced around the flowers of a climbing plant. She got up still in her nightgown, clutching Tobias, and walked to the window. The landscape was completely different from the view from her old window in the mansion, which overlooked the formal garden, with perfectly trimmed topiary and imported Italian sculptures. Here there was a freer, less tamed nature. Soft knocks on the door announced Mrs. Nelson's arrival. "Good morning, little one. Did you sleep well?" Sophia nodded shyly. "Breakfast is on the table. I made tapioca and corn cake. There are also fruits and chocolate milk. What do you think?" Sophia's stomach rumbled in response. Only now did she realize how hungry she was, having barely touched dinner the night before. Robert left early to sort some things out, but he said he'd be back soon, Mrs. Nelson informed her, as she helped Sophia choose clothes from the small suitcase she had brought. "In the meantime, it's just the two of us." In the sunny kitchen overlooking a small vegetable garden, Sophia enjoyed her breakfast. It was different from the formal, silent meals she had at the mansion since Lillian's arrival. Mrs. Nelson spoke animatedly about the plants she grew, the birds that visited the garden, and the recipes she liked to prepare. She didn't treat her as an intruder or a burden, but as a welcome guest. "Did you know my mother?" Sophia asked, biting into a slice of tapioca with cheese. "Yes, I did. Your mother used to come here sometimes before—" Mrs. Nelson paused, searching for the right words. "Before you were born." Claire was a beautiful young woman, full of life. She loved the books in Robert's library. She would spend hours talking about stories and distant places. Sophia absorbed every word, hungry for information about her mother. At home, Lillian had forbidden any mention of Claire, systematically removing photos and belongings that might remind her. Even her father avoided the subject, as if the memories were too painful. "My mother was Uncle Robert's friend since childhood, right?" "More than a friend, dear." Mrs. Nelson's eyes widened, realizing she might have said too much. "I mean, they were great friends, like siblings." Sophia wanted to ask more but was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Robert entered, accompanied by a middle-aged woman with short brown hair and red-framed glasses. "Good morning, Sophia. This is Dr. Beatrice, a friend of mine. She's a child psychologist." Sophia instinctively recoiled. "I don't want to go to any institution." Robert approached, kneeling to her height. "It's nothing like that, little one. Beatrice is just here to talk, to help us better understand what happened and how you're feeling. No one is taking you anywhere against your will. I promise." The psychologist smiled gently, maintaining a respectful distance. "Hello, Sophia. Robert told me a little about what happened yesterday. It must have been very frightening for you." Sophia studied the woman cautiously. She didn't seem threatening like the woman in white from the institution, nor fake like Lillian when she tried to impress her father. "A little bit," she admitted. "I just wanted to chat for a bit, if you don't mind. We can stay right here or wherever you feel most comfortable." "Here is fine." Sophia looked at Robert, who nodded encouragingly. "Can Uncle Robert stay too?" "Of course," Beatrice replied. The conversation with the psychologist was surprisingly easy. Beatrice didn't ask invasive questions, nor did she force Sophia to talk about things she didn't want to. They started by talking about simple things, what Sophia liked to do, her favorite subjects at school, her favorite drawings. Gradually, the girl relaxed and naturally began to talk about her life in the mansion after Lillian's arrival. "She doesn't like me," Sophia said, playing with the spoon in her empty cup. "Neither does Isabella. They pretend when my father is around, but then—" "What happens then?" Beatrice asked softly. Sophia recounted the small incidents, how her favorite clothes mysteriously disappeared, how she was always the last to be served at meals, how Isabella destroyed her drawings or hid her books. "And your father? Did you tell him?" Sophia shook her head negatively. "He's always busy or tired. And when I tried to talk, Aunt Lillian would say I was making up stories for attention." Robert, who had been listening in silence, had his jaw clenched. "And yesterday, Sophia, why do you think Lillian decided to take you to that institution?" The girl hesitated, her eyes fixed on the table. "I pushed Isabella. She said my father didn't like me anymore because I reminded him of my mother. My mother who isn't here anymore." Beatrice exchanged a meaningful look with Robert. "And before that, did you hear anything about plans to take you somewhere?" Sophia recounted the conversation she had overheard, about the boarding school in the Lake District, about the lies Lillian had told her father. When their conversation ended, Beatrice asked to speak with Robert privately. Sophia remained in the kitchen with Mrs. Nelson, who offered to teach her how to make cheese biscuits. In the living room, Beatrice spoke in a professional but concerned tone. "It's a clear case of psychological abuse, Robert. The stepmother was systematically isolating this child, erasing her existence within that house, and the attempt to institutionalize her. Even worse. From what you described, it didn't seem to be a legitimate educational institution. Sophia needs protection, and the father needs to be fully informed of what was happening." Robert ran a hand through his grey hair, visibly disturbed. "Marcus is coming back today. He said he's coming straight here from the airport." "Good. I'll leave a preliminary report for you to show him. And I'm available for a conversation." Beatrice hesitated. "Robert, I know you and Marcus have a complicated history, but—" "This isn't about me and Marcus," Robert interrupted. "It's about Sophia, about a promise I made to Claire." Beatrice studied her friend with scrutinizing eyes. "Claire? It was always her, wasn't it? Even after all these years?" Robert didn't answer, but his silence was eloquent. A few hours later, as Sophia helped Mrs. Nelson shape the biscuits, the doorbell rang. Robert went to answer it, and raised voices reached the kitchen. "Where is my daughter?" Marcus's voice sounded demanding. Sophia dropped the dough and ran to the living room, stopping at the door when she saw her father. Marcus looked different, his hair disheveled, a 5 o'clock shadow, deep dark circles marking his usually impeccable face. "Daddy." Marcus turned, and seeing his daughter, his face transformed. The businessman facade gave way to a vulnerable, almost broken expression. "Sophia." He knelt, opening his arms. After a moment of hesitation, Sophia ran to her father, letting herself be embraced. Marcus held her tightly against his chest, as if he feared she might disappear. "Forgive me, daughter. Forgive me for not realizing," Sophia cried silently, clinging to the father who for so long had seemed too distant to reach. Robert watched the scene with a mixture of relief and melancholy. When they finally separated, Marcus stood up, still holding his daughter's hand. "Thank you, Robert, for taking care of her, for opening my eyes." Robert nodded briefly. "I didn't do it for you, Marcus." "I know." Marcus looked around, seemingly noticing where he was for the first time. "Nice place. Different from what I imagined." "What did you imagine? That I'd be living in a shack after you ruined my business?" The tension between the two men was palpable. Sophia looked from one to the other, confused. "Daddy, Uncle Robert saved me," she intervened. "He appeared when Aunt Lillian left me in that place." Marcus nodded gravely. "I know, daughter. And we'll talk about all of this. But first I need to speak with Robert privately. Can you give us a moment?" Sophia looked at Robert, who nodded encouragingly. "Go help Mrs. Nelson finish those biscuits. Then we can all eat together." When Sophia left, the two men remained silent for a moment, measuring each other. "I took the first flight," Marcus said finally. "I stayed awake all night, reviewing everything, trying to understand how I could have been so blind." "You were busy building your empire," Robert replied bluntly. "Sophia was just a detail." Marcus flinched at the accusation but did not retaliate. "Perhaps you're right. After Claire, after we lost her, I buried myself in work. I thought giving Sophia everything money could buy would be enough. And Lillian, how did she enter the picture?" A tired sigh. "We met at a charity gala. She seemed so strong, so confident, the opposite of how I felt. And Isabella. I thought it would be good for Sophia to have an older sister. Without checking the character of these people, without realizing what they were doing to your own daughter." Robert's voice carried an accusation he made no attempt to disguise. "Claire entrusted you with her most precious possession, and you betrayed her." Marcus glared at Robert, a flash of anger passing through his eyes. "Don't talk about Claire as if you knew her better than me. She was my wife, and my best friend since childhood. The woman I—" Robert stopped himself, regaining control. "That doesn't matter now. What matters is Sophia. What are you suggesting? That I'm not capable of taking care of my own daughter? I am stating that you failed to protect her until now. Sophia was psychologically abused in that house, Marcus. Your own daughter, under your roof while you were too busy to notice." Robert picked up the report that Beatrice had left. "Read this. It's a preliminary report from the psychologist who spoke with Sophia today." Marcus took the document with hesitation. As he read, his face paled. "My God, how could I have allowed this?" He sank onto the sofa, looking suddenly aged. "What do I do now, Robert? How do I fix this?" The genuine vulnerability in his voice caught Robert by surprise. For an instant, he saw not the ruthless businessman he had known, but just a broken man facing the weight of his failures. "You start by protecting your daughter. Lillian needs to leave that house today." "I've already handled that," Marcus replied. "I called my lawyer as soon as I hung up our call yesterday. He's arranging everything. And I spoke with the police about the fraudulent institutionalization attempt." Robert nodded, approving the action. "What about Sophia?" "I want to take her home." "With me? Are you sure that's best for her right now? To go back to the place where she suffered so much?" Marcus seemed torn, the desire to have his daughter with him battling against the recognition that it might not be best for her. "What do you suggest, then?" "That I leave my daughter with you." The question sounded more like a challenge than a real consideration. "For now, yes. Until you resolve the situation at your house. Until Sophia feels safe again." Robert held his gaze firmly. "I'm not trying to take your daughter, Marcus. I'm trying to help her recover." A tense silence settled between them, laden with untold stories and old grievances. Finally, Marcus nodded slowly. "You really care about her? She's Claire's daughter." Marcus studied Robert for a moment, as if seeing something new. "It was always about Claire for you, wasn't it?" Robert didn't answer directly. "Sophia can stay here with me for now. You can visit her whenever you want. Take her out. Meanwhile, clear that house of all the negativity Lillian brought. And then we'll see. One step at a time, Marcus. Robert headed for the kitchen door. Sophia, can you come here? Your father wants to talk to you. Sophia appeared, her hands still dusty with flour. She looked apprehensively from one man to the other. Will I have to leave? Marcus approached, kneeling again to her height. Not now, daughter. You'll stay here with Uncle Robert for a few days, while I sort some things out at home. Is that okay with you? The relief on Sophia's face was visible. Will Aunt Lillian be there when I come back? No, darling. Aunt Lillian and Isabella won't be living with us anymore. Marcus held his daughter's small hands carefully. I'm so sorry for what happened, Sophia. I'm so sorry I didn't realize what was going on. I promise it will be different now. Sophia looked at her father with a wisdom beyond her years. Do you really promise? Because you promised you'd come to my ballet recital, and you didn't. Marcus swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the justified accusation. I promise, Sophia, and this time I'll keep it. Behind them in the kitchen doorway, Mrs. Nelson watched the scene with tear-filled eyes. Beside her, Robert maintained an impassive expression, but his gaze revealed a complex mixture of emotions. The past, the present, and an uncertain future converged at that moment, like a rushing river finally finding its course. In the weeks that followed, a new routine was established. Sophia remained at Robert's house, attending a nearby school where she quickly made friends. Marcus visited her daily, arriving promptly at 5 in the afternoon, often with a small gift, not the expensive and impersonal toys he used to bring before, but meaningful things. A storybook he himself read to her before bed, seeds to plant in the back garden with Mrs. Nelson's help, a sketchbook where she recorded her days. The mansion in Belgravia underwent a transformation. Marcus had dismissed some employees who, according to Mrs. Jenkins, had been complicit with Lillian in her unkindness towards Sophia. The housekeeper herself now oversaw a team renovating the girl's room, following Sophia's suggestions during her sporadic visits to the house. The story of Sophia's expulsion and the fraudulent institutionalization attempt eventually leaked to the press. Initially, Marcus tried to suppress the case, but a photo of Sophia sitting on the pavement with her worn suitcase taken by a passerby went viral on social media. The tabloids reveled in the drama. Construction magnate abandons his own daughter. Cruel stepmother tries to erase stepdaughter from family. It was on one of those mornings, while having coffee and reading the headlines on his tablet, that Robert received an unexpected call. Robert Miller. His voice sounded professional, as always when answering the phone. Dr. Miller, this is Christine Davies from Panorama magazine. I'd like to talk about Sophia Harrington. Robert sighed, already accustomed to this kind of approach. I have nothing to declare, Ms. Davies. I understand your reservation, Dr. Miller, but I'm not after a scandal. We're doing a story on child abuse in elite families. Sophia's case could help other children. Sophia's privacy is my priority. What if the interview was with you? Without mentioning specific details, just your perspective as temporary guardian. The journalist paused. We could also talk about your relationship with Claire Harrington. I understand you were quite close. The mention of Claire's name made Robert grip his phone tighter. How do you know that? I'm an investigative journalist, Dr. Miller. I discovered that you and Claire grew up together in Cornwall, attended the same school. There are rumors you were more than friends before she met Marcus. That was a long time ago. And yet when her daughter needed you, you were there. Even after years of no contact. Even after Marcus Harrington practically destroyed your construction company during the 2018 merger. The journalist's voice softened. There's a beautiful story here, Dr. Miller. A story about loyalty, about promises kept. Robert remained silent. The past returning in waves he had tried for years to contain. Think about it, Christine continued. I'm sending my card with a messenger. If you change your mind, my number is there. After hanging up, Robert stood motionless, looking out the kitchen window at the garden where Sophia was playing with a kitten they had rescued the previous week. The girl smiled, something that had become more frequent lately. Every smile reminded him of Claire, the same shape of the lips, the same dimple in the left corner. The sound of the doorbell brought him back to the present. Mrs. Nelson went to answer it. Anne soon returned with an elegant envelope. From that journalist, she informed him, placing the envelope on the table. The little girl is asking if she can name the kitten Star. She said she needs your approval as second father. The housekeeper smiled. Those were her words. Robert felt a pang in his chest. Second father? I never could. You act like one, Mrs. Nelson replied simply. And she needs that now. In the afternoon, when Marcus arrived for his daily visit, he found Robert in the study, surrounded by old boxes. What's all this? He asked, observing the yellowed photographs and documents scattered on the table. Memories. Robert looked up. Sophia is in the bath. Mrs. Nelson is helping her get ready. Marcus nodded, an uncomfortable silence settling between them. After weeks of forced cohabitation because of Sophia, the two men had established a tense truce, but they rarely found themselves alone. I get calls from journalists every day, Marcus commented, trying to start a conversation. They want to turn this into a primetime melodrama. I also got one today, Robert replied, closing one of the folders. Christine Davies from Panorama. She's persistent, trying to reach me 3 times. Marcus approached the table, his eyes catching a photo among the documents. Is this? Robert followed his gaze. It was an old photograph. 3 smiling teenagers on a beach in Cornwall, the turquoise sea in the background. Claire in the center, radiant at 15, flanked by Robert and Marcus. Summer festival of 1998, Robert confirmed. You had just arrived in town with your parents. Marcus picked up the photo carefully, as if holding something fragile. I had forgotten how young we were, how everything seemed possible. He looked at Robert. How we were friends. Before you decided you wanted everything. My father's construction company, the land in the Cotswolds. Claire. Marcus returned the photo to the table. It wasn't like that. No? You knew how I felt about her. You knew we planned to be together after university. Claire made her choice, Robert. She chose to be with me. Robert laughed without humor. After you told her I had been with another girl on the trip to Brighton, a lie that destroyed everything between us. A flicker of guilt passed through Marcus's eyes. We were young. I loved her, and that's why you lied. That's why you betrayed me who was like a brother to you. Robert shook his head. And then when I finally rebuilt my life, when my father's construction company was recovering under my management, you orchestrated that hostile merger. It was business, Robert. It wasn't personal. It was revenge. Because Claire still talked about me. Because she maintained our friendship even against your will. The two men stared at each other, decades of unresolved grievances hanging between them. It was Marcus who finally broke the silence. You're right. His admission surprised Robert. About the merger, at least. It was personal. I was jealous. Even after years of marriage, even with Sophia, I saw how Claire talked about you. With admiration, as if you were some kind of hero who chose the nobler path. He sighed. I had everything. Money, power, the woman we both loved. But I never had the certainty that she loved me completely. I always felt a part of her still belonged to you. Robert absorbed the words, a confession he had waited 2 decades to hear. Claire loved you, Marcus. She chose you, with or without lies. And she was happy until the accident, Marcus completed, the pain evident on his face. That damn trip to the Isle of Wight. I should have been with her on the boat, but I was on a conference call. He covered his face with his hands. I'm repeating the same mistakes with Sophia, aren't I? Prioritizing work, business. You have a chance to do things differently now, Robert replied, his voice softer. Sophia needs her father. The real Marcus, not the businessman. The sound of light footsteps interrupted the conversation. Sophia appeared at the door, dressed to go out, her hair still damp from her bath. Daddy, you're here! She ran to hug Marcus, who lifted her into his arms. Ready for our outing? I was thinking of going to the zoo today. Sophia nodded enthusiastically, but then noticed the photos on the table. What are these photos? Is that Mummy? She leaned over the table. She was so beautiful. Marcus and Robert exchanged glances. Yes, that was your mother as a teenager, Robert explained. Here in Cornwall where we grew up. Sophia studied the images with fascination. Were you 3 friends? Like in Harry Potter? Marcus chuckled. Something like that. I was the new kid in town, and your mother and Robert welcomed me into their group. And then you fell in love? Sophia asked innocently, looking at her father. Yes, Marcus replied, glancing sideways at Robert. "Your mother was easy to love." Sophia continued examining the photos and then found a yellowed envelope with Claire's elegant handwriting. "What's this?" Robert took the envelope before she could open it. Just an old letter. Nothing important. But Sophia, with the typical persistence of a curious child, didn't give up. "Is it a letter from my mother to you?" "Can I read it?" Marcus intervened. "Sophia, some things are private. Let's respect that, okay?" He turned to Robert. "Will you join us at the zoo? We could have lunch together afterward." The invitation surprised both Robert and Sophia, who clapped her hands enthusiastically. "Yes, Uncle Robert, come with us. I want to show Daddy how much you know about animals." Robert hesitated, looking at the scattered photos and documents, fragments of a past he had never truly left behind. "Go get ready," Marcus said softly. "Sophia would like that. And Claire would too," Robert added almost to himself, carefully tucking the letter into the inside pocket of his jacket. At the zoo, the three formed a curious picture, Sophia in the center, holding the hands of the two men who now commanded her life. To passers-by, they might have seemed like an ordinary family, enjoying a Sunday afternoon. During lunch at a nearby pizza place, Sophia animatedly recounted stories about her new school, about Star the kitten, and about how Mrs. Nelson was teaching her to make fritters. "And when can I go home, Daddy?" she asked suddenly, catching both men by surprise. Marcus wiped his mouth with his napkin, buying time. "Well, your room is almost ready. We painted it light yellow, as you asked. And I put up that shelf for your books. But Aunt Lillian, she won't be coming back," Marcus assured her. "Never again." Sophia considered for a moment, playing with her juice straw. "And will you be there? Or will you be traveling like before?" The simple question carried the weight of previous broken promises. Marcus looked at Robert as if seeking guidance, but the other man merely watched, letting him find his own answers. "I'll be there, Sophia." "I promise." Marcus took his daughter's small hand. "In fact, I've made some decisions. Roderick will take over as group president. I'll become chairman of the board only." Robert raised his eyebrows, genuinely surprised. Marcus Harrington, the obsessive workaholic, reducing his corporate responsibilities. "That means I won't have to travel as much. We'll have more time together." Marcus smiled at his daughter, who looked at him cautiously as if afraid to believe completely. "So I can go home next week?" Marcus looked at Robert. "What do you think? Is she ready? Am I ready?" Robert took a sip of his water, reflecting. Sophia had blossomed in recent weeks, regaining the confidence and natural joy of a 6-year-old. But a part of him, a part he was ashamed to admit, didn't want to let her go. He didn't want to lose this last link to Claire, this girl who had filled his lonely house with laughter and endless questions. "Sophia," he said finally, "what do you want?" The girl seemed surprised to have her opinion solicited on such an important matter. She looked from Robert to her father, biting her lower lip exactly as Claire used to do when concentrating. "I want to go home with Daddy," she said finally, then quickly added, "But I want to visit you and Mrs. Nelson and bring Star with me. He can come, right?" Robert smiled, ignoring the pang of sadness. "Of course he can. And you can visit whenever you want. Or better yet," Marcus interjected, surprising everyone again, "Robert can come visit us too. The house is too big for just the two of us. And I'm sure you'd like to have your godfather around, wouldn't you?" Sophia's eyes widened. "Godfather?" Marcus looked directly at Robert. "If he accepts, of course. Claire always wanted it to be Robert, you know. But I was stubborn. It's time to correct that." Robert stared at his old friend, old rival, unable to hide his surprise. "Marcus, just think about it." Marcus turned his attention to the dessert menu. "Sophia, how about we share a creme caramel?" While father and daughter discussed dessert options, Robert reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, touching the envelope containing Claire's last letter, written just days before the accident. A letter he had never shown anyone, where she wrote about regrets, about choices, and about her wish that no matter what happened, Robert would remain in Sophia's life. She knew, Robert thought, watching Sophia laugh at one of Marcus's jokes. Somehow she knew I would be needed one day. That night, after dropping Marcus and Sophia off at the entrance of the gated community where he lived, Robert returned home alone, Claire's letter in his hands, ready to reread it as he did on particularly lonely nights. But this time something had changed. The weight he had carried for so many years felt a little lighter, the future a little less solitary. On the morning Sophia definitively returned to the Harrington mansion, the London sky dawned exceptionally blue without the typical fog that usually covered the city. It was as if nature was celebrating a new beginning, Robert thought, as he helped carry the few things the girl had accumulated during her stay. They weren't many items, some clothes, books, drawings, and of course Star, the grey kitten that now meowed indignantly inside its carrier. Mrs. Nelson had prepared an orange cake, Sophia's favourite, as a farewell breakfast. The table was meticulously set, decorated with garden flowers and colourful napkins folded into little boats, one of the housekeeper's skills that delighted the girl. "I'll miss you, little one," Mrs. Nelson said, tenderly adjusting Sophia's hair. "Who will help me pick cherries now?" "I'll come visit," Sophia promised, hugging the lady tightly. "And I'll call every day." Robert watched the scene, trying to maintain his composure. In recent weeks, his house had transformed. The previously silent rooms now held echoes of children's laughter, curious questions, bedtime stories. The idea of returning to the previous silence frightened him more than he cared to admit. When they finished breakfast, the intercom rang, announcing Marcus's arrival. Sophia ran to the window, waving excitedly to her father, who was waiting in the car. "It's time," Robert said, forcing a smile. "Are you sure you haven't forgotten anything?" Sophia shook her head, but then seemed to remember something. She ran to her room and returned with a drawing. "I made this for you, Uncle Robert, so you don't forget me." The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands, a tall grey-haired man, Robert, a small girl with curls, Sophia, and an ethereal, almost transparent female figure hovering above them with improvised wings, Claire. In the corner, Star appeared as a small grey ball with large eyes. "It's our family," Sophia explained with the simplicity of children. "Mummy is always watching over us, even if we can't see her." Robert swallowed the lump in his throat, unable to speak. He simply hugged Sophia, trying to convey in that gesture everything he couldn't express in words. In the car, on the way to the mansion, Sophia talked incessantly about plans for Star's room, the games they would play, the books they would read together. Marcus listened attentively, answering questions and fueling his daughter's enthusiasm. Robert remained silent in the passenger seat, observing the interaction with a mixture of joy and melancholy. The mansion in Belgravia looked different. The formal garden had been partially redesigned, incorporating more natural areas, with wildflowers and fruit trees, a clear attempt to recreate the environment Sophia had so enjoyed at Robert's house. The central fountain, once a classical sculpture imported from Italy, now gave way to a smaller version of the cherry tree the girl loved so much. Mrs. Jenkins waited at the door, her eyes shining with emotion at the sight of Sophia. Behind her, a line of staff, some new, others familiar, smiled a welcome. "My little one is back," exclaimed the housekeeper, opening her arms to receive Sophia. As the girl ran into Mrs. Jenkins's embrace, Marcus approached Robert. "I know this is difficult for you," he said softly. "Thank you for bringing some normalcy back into her life." Robert nodded without responding. Together they followed Sophia, who was already running into the house, eager to see the promised changes. The interior of the mansion had undergone a subtle but significant transformation. Where once a cold, impersonal luxury prevailed, there were now touches of warmth and personality. Photos of Claire, once banned by Lillian, again occupied space on the walls and side tables. A large photograph of the woman smiling on a Cornwall beach now dominated the main wall of the living room, the same photo Sophia had found among Robert's belongings. "Come see your room," Marcus called, taking Sophia's hand. The girl's room had been completely renovated. The baby pink walls had given way to a soft yellow. A new bed with a light canopy replaced the old one. Shelves full of books covered one wall, and a special corner had been set up for Star, with a bed, toys, and all the accessories a cat could wish for. "There's a special surprise," Marcus said, pointing to a door in the corner of the room that Sophia didn't recognize. Curious, the girl opened the door and let out an exclamation of surprise. It was a small art studio with an easel, paints, brushes, and all kinds of drawing and painting materials. "You always loved to draw, like your mother," Marcus explained. "Claire was a talented artist before she..." Before she met me and gave up art for business administration, Sophia completed. Repeating something she had probably heard before, Marcus seemed surprised. No, Sophia. Your mother never gave up art. She just put it on hold for a while. He exchanged a look with Robert, who remained in the doorway. In fact, she had plans to go back to painting when you were a little older. Really? Sophia looked from her father to Robert, seeking confirmation. True, Robert confirmed. Your mother talked about it in the letters she sent me. She had a special talent for capturing light, like you in your drawings. Sophia smiled, absorbing the new information about the mother she had known so briefly. She then turned to explore the rest of the room, leaving the two men alone for a moment. You never told me about these letters, Marcus commented, without accusation in his voice. You never asked, Robert replied simply. Claire and I kept in touch over the years, even after everything. She told me about Sophia, about her projects. We exchanged ideas. Marcus absorbed the information in silence. I knew, he finally said. Not about the specific letters, but I knew you communicated. Claire never hid that from me. He paused. I was jealous, of course, but now I understand better. You had a connection that came from childhood, something I could never replace. Just as she had a connection with you that I could never have, Robert retorted. She chose you, Marcus. In the end, that was the decision that mattered. Sophia came running back, interrupting the moment of revelations. Daddy, can I put Star in my room now? He must be scared in his box. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. Sophia adapted Star to the new environment, organized her belongings, and explored every renovated corner of the mansion. As the sun began to set, Robert announced it was time to go. As much as he wanted to stay, he knew that father and daughter needed this time together to rebuild their relationship and establish new routines. You'll come back tomorrow, won't you? Sophia asked, clinging to Robert's hand tightly. If your father doesn't mind, he replied, looking at Marcus. Actually, Marcus said, I was thinking of something more permanent. He took an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Robert. It's a contract for the Greenwich Peninsula Residential Complex project. Robert took the envelope, confused. You want me to build the Greenwich Peninsula Gardens? I thought Albuquerque Construction already had the contract. We only had a pre-agreement. I decided it would be better to work with someone I truly trust. Marcus smiled slightly. Besides, your construction company's office would be only 15 minutes from here. It would be convenient for your regular visits as Sophia's official godfather. Robert stared at Marcus, looking for signs of a trick or trap, but found only sincerity. Why? Because Sophia needs both of us, Marcus replied simply. And because it's time to correct some past mistakes. Before Robert could answer, Marcus's phone rang. He answered briefly and his face transformed. We need to turn on the television now. In the living room, they turned on the huge flat-screen TV. The news showed images of Lillian being escorted by police out of a luxury hotel in Miami. We return live with breaking news, the reporter announced. Lillian Harrington, wife of businessman Marcus Harrington, has just been detained in Miami on charges of document forgery and attempted fraudulent institutionalization of her stepdaughter, Sophia Harrington. According to sources, Lillian allegedly forged her husband's signature on official documents, attempting to institutionalize the 6-year-old girl in a dubious institution in London. The arrest comes after an investigation conducted by British authorities in cooperation with American police. Marcus quickly turned off the television, looking worriedly at Sophia. But to his surprise, the girl didn't seem shaken. Will she be arrested? Sophia asked with the typical frankness of children. I don't know exactly, daughter, Marcus replied cautiously. But she will face the consequences of what she did. And she won't be able to hurt you ever again. Sophia nodded, absorbing the information. Then, with a wisdom that often surprised the adults around her, she said, I hope she finds someone to help her be better, like Uncle Robert helped me. The two men exchanged glances, touched by the little girl's capacity for compassion. What about Isabella? Sophia asked, suddenly concerned. Will she be alone? No, darling, Marcus assured her. Isabella is with her father in Europe. She'll be fine. Hours later, after Sophia fell asleep in her new room with Star nestled at the foot of her bed, Marcus and Robert sat on the mansion's terrace, sharing a whiskey as the city lights twinkled below them. You Already knew about the investigation, Robert stated. It wasn't a question. Yes, ever since you told me what happened, I activated my lawyers. Marcus swirled the glass between his fingers. I never thought it would come to this. An international arrest, media scandal, he sighed. My reputation is going to take quite a hit. Your reputation matters less than Sophia's safety. I know that now. Marcus stared at the horizon dotted with lights. You know what's most ironic? I met Lillian at a charity gala for underprivileged children. She seemed so dedicated to the cause, so concerned with child welfare. He laughed without humor. What a talented actress. Robert remained silent, allowing Marcus to continue his reflection. After Claire was gone, I was so lost, the businessman continued, so focused on not feeling the pain that I didn't realize Sophia was sinking with me. And then Lillian appeared like a lifeline. She saw an opportunity, Robert commented, a rich, vulnerable family, and I allowed it. Out of weakness, out of cowardice, out of not wanting to face the reality of raising Sophia alone. Marcus gulped down the rest of his whiskey. Claire would have despised me for it. Claire would have understood, Robert corrected. She was always the most understanding of the three of us. Remember that time we missed the boat to the Isle of Skye because you insisted on checking your emails? A genuine smile appeared on Marcus's face, and we ended up sleeping in that run-down guest house, with chickens in the backyard and that dog that wouldn't stop barking. Claire just laughed. Said it was part of the adventure. Marcus shook his head, nostalgia evident in his gaze. How different we were back then. Not so different, Robert replied. Just younger, with less to lose. The two sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own memories of Claire, of youth, of a time when the future seemed infinite in possibilities. Are you going to accept the contract? Marcus asked finally, changing the subject. Robert considered for a moment. A few months ago he would have refused immediately. Marcus Harrington was the man who had destroyed his construction company, who had forced him to start from scratch. But now there was Sophia to consider. I'll think about it, he replied. It's an important project. I need to assess if we have the capacity to execute it properly. I'm sure you do. Marcus poured another finger of whiskey for each of them. Your construction company was always known for quality. That's what annoyed me the most, you know? Even after the merger, even after everything I did, you managed to rebuild and keep your reputation intact. It wasn't easy, Robert admitted. I had to sell almost everything, start practically from scratch. But some clients remained loyal, because of your integrity, something I should have valued more. Marcus raised his glass in a silent toast to the new phase. Robert reciprocated the gesture, sealing an unstated pact. They weren't friends again. There were too many wounds for that. But they were united by something stronger than the past, Sophia's future. The next morning, while Sophia was still asleep, Robert left the mansion with a promise to return for dinner. There was much to think about, important decisions to make. The Greenwich Peninsula contract represented not only a business opportunity, but a bridge to a new family arrangement he had never imagined. On the way home, he decided to take a detour. He drove to Highgate Cemetery, a place he visited religiously every month. The Noronha family vault was simple compared to the monuments around it. Claire never liked ostentation. On the white marble headstone, Robert placed, as always, a sprig of jasmine, her favorite flowers. Things are changing, Claire, he murmured, as if talking to an old friend. Your daughter is amazing, strong like you, stubborn like Marcus. And believe it or not, your husband and I are trying to make things work. He smiled slightly. You always said we'd understand each other one day. It seems you were right, as always. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the nearby trees, and Robert allowed himself to imagine for a moment that it was Claire responding in her own way. Upon returning home, he found Mrs. Nelson organizing Sophia's former room, putting away clothes, tidying toys. The housekeeper's eyes were red. The house feels so empty now, she commented, folding a small t-shirt. That girl brought so much life. She'll come visit us, Robert assured, trying to comfort not only the housekeeper but himself. And we'll go see her too. Are you going to accept Mr. Harrington's offer? Mrs. Nelson asked, always perceptive. How do you know that? The lady smiled. Little Sophia told me yesterday before they left. She said her father was fixing mistakes so you could be a family again. Robert shook his head, surprised by the child's insight. Sophia understands more than we imagine. Children always understand. They just express it differently. Mrs. Nelson finished putting away the clothes and turned to face him. You deserve this chance, Dr. Miller, to have a family. Mrs. Clare would have wanted this. That night, when he returned to the Harrington mansion for dinner, Robert carried with him the signed contract and a decision made. He found Sophia in the garden playing with Star, while Marcus, sitting on a nearby bench, took a final work call. Uncle Robert, Sophia exclaimed upon seeing him running to hug him. You came. I promised I would, didn't I? Robert lifted the girl into his arms, surprised by how much he already missed her after just one day. Marcus ended his call and approached. Welcome, dinner's almost ready. During the meal, specially prepared by Mrs. Jenkins, Sophia dominated the conversation, animatedly recounting her day. How Star had explored every corner of the mansion, how she had organized her books by color on the new shelf, how her father had promised to take her to see his office next week. And you can come too. Uncle Robert, she announced, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Daddy said you two are going to work together now. Marcus raised his eyebrows. I said we might work together, Sophia. It depends on Uncle Robert accepting my proposal. Robert took the envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket and slid it across the table. It's signed. With a few conditions I added in the addendum. Marcus opened the envelope, quickly examining the documents. A slight smile appeared on his face as he read the conditions. Profit sharing for employees. Commitment to social housing in the surrounding area. Training programs for young people from the community. He looked up. Sounds like Claire talking. They were her ideas, Robert confirmed. Projects we discussed in letters. She always believed that civil construction had a responsibility to the city, not just to profit. I agree with everything. Marcus extended his hand across the table. Welcome to the project, partner. Sophia clapped her hands enthusiastically, though she probably didn't fully understand the significance of that moment. For her, the important thing was that the two most important men in her life finally seemed at peace. Later, after putting Sophia to bed, Marcus invited Robert for a final conversation in his study. The room, once a typically masculine environment with dark woods and leather armchairs, now displayed some subtle changes. On the wall behind the desk, where before there were only diplomas and certificates, now hung a large painting, a painting Robert recognized immediately. The sunset in Cornwall, he said, approaching to examine the canvas, one of Claire's last works. I found it in storage along with several others, Marcus explained. Lillian had ordered all her paintings to be stored. Said they didn't match the decor. Robert observed the work carefully. Claire had a special gift for capturing light, the colors of the sky reflected in the sea, the silhouette of fishing boats against the orange horizon. It was Cornwall exactly as he remembered it from teenage afternoons. Sophia needs to see Cornwall, he said suddenly. She needs to see the place where her mother grew up, where we grew up. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Next holidays, perhaps. We could rent a house there for a few weeks. I still have my parents' house, Robert offered. It's been closed for years, but I kept the property. With some renovations, it would be perfect. It would be good for her, Marcus agreed. To know her roots. The two men stood in silence for a moment, contemplating the painting that represented so much of their shared past. It was Marcus who finally spoke. I found something I think you should see. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a small, faded, blue-covered book. It's Claire's diary, from her last few months. Robert looked at the object with a mixture of desire and apprehension. Shouldn't that be private? Normally, yes. But there are parts she wrote for you. Marcus extended the book. I think she would want you to read it. Robert took the diary carefully, as if holding something precious and fragile. Have you read it? Only what was necessary to understand. Marcus poured himself another finger of whiskey. Claire knew Robert. Somehow she knew she wouldn't be here for long. There are passages where she talks about premonitions, about preparing the way for Sophia. A shiver ran down Robert's spine. Claire had always had a special sensitivity, an intuition that often bordered on the supernatural. And she mentioned something about me? Just read it for yourself. But yes, she had hopes that one day you and I could overcome the E. Passed for Sophia, Marcus paused. In the last entry, 3 days before she passed, she wrote that she had sent you a letter. The final letter, Robert murmured, remembering the yellowed envelope he kept as a treasure, where she asked me to look after Sophia if anything happened. So that was it. Marcus didn't seem surprised. She never told me the exact contents, only that she had written to you. Now I understand why. Robert carefully placed the diary in his jacket pocket, next to the letter he always carried. I'll take good care of this, and then I'll return it to Sophia when she's older. Marcus nodded. It's the right thing to do. Leaving the mansion that night, Robert felt different, lighter somehow, as if a circle had finally closed. The path that had begun decades ago in a small coastal town had taken surprising turns, traversed valleys of grief and resentment, but now seemed to be heading for a destination that, though unexpected, made sense. Claire, in her mysterious and wise way, had planned everything. She had planted seeds that were only now beginning to bloom, creating a new kind of family from the fragments of the old. 3 months had passed since Sophia's return to the Harrington mansion. The London winter was taking its last breaths, and the yellow trumpet trees were beginning to colour the city, announcing the imminent spring. In Sophia's life, too, new routines and new certainties were blossoming. The partnership between Marcus and Robert on the Greenwich Peninsula Gardens project had solidified, extending to other ventures. The joint office they opened was strategically positioned between the Harrington mansion and Robert's house, allowing both men to take turns picking Sophia up from school and accompanying her to her activities. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, the girl had painting lessons with Cecilia, an artist who had been Claire's friend in college. On Saturdays, she spent the morning at Robert's house, helping Mrs. Nelson in the garden and playing with the 2 new kittens that Star had adopted, kittens rescued from an abandoned box Sophia had found on her way to school. On that sunny September morning, Marcus watched his daughter in the art studio he had set up for her. Sophia was concentrated on a large canvas, bigger than any she had worked on before. Confident brushstrokes for a child her age gave shape to a scene he recognized immediately. The beach of Cornwall with its calm waters and colorful boats, the colonial houses in the background. "It's looking beautiful," he commented, approaching carefully so as not to startle her. Sophia smiled without taking her eyes off the canvas. "It's for the school exhibition. The teacher said we could paint our favorite place." "But you've never been to Cornwall," Marcus observed, curious. "I saw it in the photos, and Uncle Robert told me so much that it feels like I've already been there." Sophia dipped her brush into a deep blue, adding details to the sky. "Besides, it's the place where Mummy was happy. You can see it in her eyes in the photos." Marcus nodded, touched by his daughter's perception. "You know, I've been thinking, your birthday is coming up. What do you think about a special trip this year?" Sophia dropped her brush and turned, her eyes shining with anticipation. "Cornwall?" "Exactly." Marcus smiled at his daughter's excitement. "Robert is overseeing the renovation of his parents' old house. We could spend your birthday there, visit all the places your mother loved. Can we bring Star? And Mrs. Jenkins? And Mrs. Nelson?" Marcus laughed at the girl's growing enthusiasm. "We'll need a bus to bring everyone you want to invite. But yes, we can arrange all of that." Sophia jumped up, hugging her father with hands still stained with paint. Marcus didn't mind the colorful marks on his white shirt. He had learned in recent months that some stains were worth more than all the perfection in the world. Later that day, while Sophia was at ballet class, an activity she had resumed with enthusiasm, Marcus met Robert in the office they shared in the new development. "How's the renovation in Cornwall coming along?" he asked, as they reviewed the plans for the residential sector of the complex. "Progressing well." The structure was surprisingly well preserved for a house that had been closed for so long. Robert showed some photos on his phone. "I expanded the back veranda that overlooks the sea. Sophia will love having breakfast there." Marcus observed the images with interest. The wooden and stone house retained the rustic charm typical of the region, but the renovated interiors offered all the necessary comfort. "It's a beautiful property. I never understood why you didn't sell it even in difficult times." "Some things are priceless," Robert replied simply. "It was my mother's favorite place. And then, well, there were a lot of memories there." "Memories with Claire," Marcus completed, without resentment in his voice. "With Claire, with you, with all the friends from that time." Robert closed the photos and returned to the project plans. Simpler times. The two worked in silence for some time, immersed in the technical details of the venture that represented not only a professional milestone, but also a personal one, the materialization of their improbable reconciliation. "The journalist, Christine Davies, called me again," Marcus commented, as they analyzed the updated budget. "She still wants to do the story." "About Sophia?" "Not exactly. Now she's more interested in our story. 3 childhood friends, a love triangle, business rivalry, and then an unexpected reconciliation decades later." Marcus shrugged. "She thinks it would make a good drama series," Robert chuckled. "And what did you tell her?" "Learned that some stories are best left private." Marcus paused. "But I've been thinking, maybe we should record something. For Sophia when she grows up. So she understands how we got here." The suggestion surprised Robert. "What do you have in mind? A memoir, perhaps? Something with our stories, old photos, memories of Claire. A record of the complicated journey that brought us to this moment." Marcus gestured around, indicating not just the office, but everything they had built in recent months. "Sophia deserves to know the whole story one day." The idea resonated with Robert. Ever since he started reading Claire's diary, he'd been thinking of ways to preserve those memories for Sophia. "We could start with Cornwall," he suggested. "Record our stories there where it all began." The memoir project quickly became as important as the real estate development. In the following weeks, Marcus and Robert spent hours sifting through boxes of old photos, retrieving letters, looking for mutual friends from their teenage years who could contribute their memories. For Sophia, who watched all this activity with curiosity, it was like watching a treasure slowly being unearthed, a treasure made of stories about her mother, about a time before she existed, about the people who shaped her current family, so different from her schoolmates' families. On the eve of the trip to Cornwall, Sophia found Robert in the mansion garden, contemplating the sunset. She approached silently and sat beside him on the bench. "What are you thinking about, Uncle Robert?" He smiled, always surprised by the girl's ability to perceive when something was bothering him. "How life comes full circle, little one. How things that seem terrible at one moment can lead to something good later." Sophia nodded seriously, as if she understood perfectly. "Like when Aunt Lillian left me in that bad place, but because of that you came into my life." "Exactly," Robert put his arm around her shoulders. "Sometimes the hardest path leads us to the right destination. Mummy knew that, didn't she? That's why she wrote you that letter." Robert studied the girl with curiosity. "How do you know about the letter?" Sophia shrugged. "You mentioned it once when you thought I was asleep. And then Daddy told me about Mummy's diary, where she wrote that she had sent you an important letter." "You're very observant," Robert commented, impressed. "Did Mummy ask you to take care of me?" The direct question caught Robert off guard. For a moment, he considered softening the truth, making it more palatable for a 6-year-old. But Sophia was no ordinary child. She had faced more in her few years of life than many adults. "Yes," he finally replied. "Your mother had a premonition. Something she couldn't explain. She asked me to be there if you ever needed me. And you kept your promise." "I tried. I should have been more present from the start, but—" Robert hesitated. "But you and Daddy fought," Sophia completed. "Because of Mummy and the business." Robert nodded, once again admiring the girl's sharp perception. "How do you know so much?" Sophia smiled, a clever and sweet smile at the same time. "I listen to conversations. And Mrs. Jenkins sometimes talks too much when she's helping me bathe." Robert chuckled, imagining the well-intentioned indiscretions of the housekeeper. "Well, the important thing is that we're all together now, isn't it? A different family, but still a family. The best family," Sophia declared with conviction. "I have a father, a godfather, 2 honorary grandmothers with the best recipes in the world, and Mummy watching over all of us from above." The simplicity with which she described her reconstructed world deeply touched Robert. There was wisdom in that childlike acceptance, in that ability to rearrange the pieces of life into a new design. The next morning, they left early for Cornwall. The convoy consisted of Marcus's SUV, with Sophia star in his carrier, and Mrs. Jenkins, and Robert's car carrying Mrs. Nelson and the luggage. The 4-hour drive along the A30 was punctuated by stops for Sophia to admire the sea, so different from London's urban landscape. Upon arriving in the ancient colonial town, With its cobbled streets and historic houses, Sophia was amazed. "It's exactly like in Mummy's photos, and like in my painting." Robert's house was a little removed from the historic centre, on a more secluded stretch of the beach. When they finally arrived, Sophia was the first to jump out of the car, running to the wide veranda overlooking the calm sea of the bay. "Here. Was this where you played when you were little?" she asked, pointing to the light sandy beach just below the house. "Right there," Robert confirmed, joining her on the veranda. "We built sandcastles, looked for seashells, swam to that big rock." He pointed to a rock formation a few meters from the beach. "And Mummy too?" "Your mother was the best swimmer of all of us," Marcus interjected, who had just come up with some luggage. "She always got to the rock first, no matter who she competed against." The days in Cornwall passed at a different, slower and more harmonious pace. Sophia explored every corner of the town with insatiable enthusiasm, always wanting to know more about the places her mother had been, the games they played, the stories from that time. Marcus and Robert, inspired by the environment and the memories that resurfaced at every corner, worked on the book project for Sophia, recording conversations, noting down stories, scanning old photos found in dusty albums in the attic of the house. On the eve of Sophia's birthday, while the girls slept, exhausted after a full day at the beach, the two men sat on the veranda with a bottle of wine, contemplating the silvery sea under the moonlight. "I never imagined we'd be here," Marcus commented, observing the gentle waves. "Not like this." "Life has an interesting sense of humor," Robert agreed. "Or perhaps Claire has more influence than we imagine even now." Marcus smiled, thinking of his wife. She always had a gift for bringing people together, for seeing the best in everyone. "I think Sophia inherited that from her." "And your stubbornness," Robert added with a half-smile. "And your sense of justice," Marcus retorted. The two toasted silently, acknowledging the truth in each other's words. Sophia was in fact a mixture of the best of each of them, as if Claire had managed, through her daughter, to finally unite the two men she had loved most in her life. "What do you think she would want for Sophia's future?" Marcus asked after a moment. Robert reflected, recalling conversations with Claire, the letters exchanged over the years, the diary he now knew so well. "She would want Sophia to be free to choose her own path, not to feel pressured to follow in our footsteps, nor hers. Then we must ensure she has every opportunity." Marcus took a sip of wine. "You know, Mum, I've been thinking of creating a foundation. In Claire's name, to support young artists, especially women." "Claire would love that," Robert nodded, approving the idea. She always talked about how difficult it was to pursue an artistic career, especially coming from a traditional family like hers. Sophia could get involved when she's older. It would be a way to connect her with her mother's legacy. "And preserve Claire's memory in a way that truly matters," Robert completed. Sophia's birthday morning dawned with a perfectly blue sky, as if specially ordered for the occasion. The house was decorated with colourful balloons and festive banners, the work of Mrs. Jenkins and Mrs. Nelson, who had risen before dawn to prepare everything. On the breakfast table, sat on the veranda overlooking the sea, a chocolate cake decorated with sugar seashells occupied the centre spot. Sophia, still in her pyjamas, rubbed her eyes sleepily as she was guided to the veranda. "Surprise!" everyone exclaimed together. The girl's expression quickly shifted from sleepiness to surprise, and then to pure joy. "Wow, is all this for me?" "7 is a very important age," Mrs. Nelson declared solemnly. "It deserves a celebration to match." After the festive breakfast, where Sophia blew out the candles making a secret wish, Marcus announced he had a special surprise. He asked everyone to accompany him to the beach, where a boat decorated with colourful ribbons awaited them. "We're going on a special trip," he explained, "to your mother's favourite places in the bay." The boat trip was magical. Robert and Marcus took turns telling stories about each cove, each hidden beach, each rock with some special meaning. Sophia absorbed everything with sparkling eyes, building in her mind a map of her mother's past. When they returned, already in the middle of the afternoon, a new surprise awaited. Sophia's school friends from London had arrived for the party, brought by their parents whom Marcus had secretly invited. The house's garden was now full of children running, laughing, playing. In a quiet moment during the celebration, while the children were participating in a treasure hunt organized by Mrs. Jenkins, Marcus and Robert gave Sophia her main gift. It's something we started making, but it won't be finished for a very long time, Marcus explained, handing her a carved wooden box. Inside the box, Sophia found a leather-bound book. The first pages already filled with photos, handwritten stories, small objects glued in like old cinema tickets and seashells from the Cornwall beach. It's our family book, Robert explained. We started with stories from before you were born, from when we were young like you, when we met your mother, and we'll keep adding more stories as you grow up. This is just the beginning, Marcus added. You yourself can write your own stories in it one day. Sophia leafed through the book with reverence, stopping at a specific photo. Teenage Claire, smiling between Marcus and Robert on the same beach where they had spent the day. Can I continue her story? How so, dear? Marcus asked. Mummy's story. She was a painter. Then she stopped, then she was going to paint again. Can I continue where she left off? The two men exchanged emotional glances. Of course you can, Robert replied. Your mother would love that. Sophia hugged the book to her chest. This is the best gift ever. Better than the boat trip and the party. That night, when the children had left and Sophia had finally fallen asleep, exhausted but happy, Marcus and Robert returned to the veranda, their favorite spot in the house. The full moon illuminated the sea, creating a silvery path on the calm waters. I think we did it, Marcus said, breaking the contemplative silence. Give Sophia what she needed. A family, Robert agreed. Different, complex, full of complicated stories, but still a family. Claire would be proud. She is, Robert replied with conviction. Somehow she's seeing all of this. Days later, upon returning to London, resuming the routine of work, school and commitments, something had subtly changed. The Harrington mansion, once a symbol of wealth and status, was now simply a home. The office shared by Marcus and Robert became not only a business centre, but a meeting point for family planning. And Sophia, at the centre of it all, blossomed. Her paintings began to gain prominence at school, her natural talent enhanced by lessons with Cecilia. Her first school exhibition, a month after returning from Cornwall, attracted not only classmates and teachers, but also friends and colleagues of Marcus and Robert. The main painting, the one Sophia had painted before the trip, the Cornwall beach with the colonial houses in the background, occupied the place of honour. Beside it, a new work. 3 figures holding hands walking on the sand, with a 4th ethereal figure hovering above them, almost transparent against the blue sky. It's my family, Sophia proudly explained to a teacher who admired the work. My father, my godfather, me and my mother watching over us. The simple, direct definition deeply touched Marcus and Robert, who watched the scene a few steps away. You know what impresses me most about her? Marcus commented in a low voice. Her ability to accept life as it is, without clinging to what might have been. A lesson it took us decades to learn, Robert replied with a half smile. In the following months, life took its course, now at a more harmonious pace. The Claire Noronha Harrington Foundation was officially established, with the aim of supporting promising young artists from underprivileged communities. The Greenwich Peninsula Gardens complex was completed on schedule, with a sector dedicated to social housing that became a model for future developments in the city. And the memoir for Sophia continued to grow. Each page a new story, a new discovery about the past that had shaped her present. One December evening, as the city prepared for Christmas, Sophia appeared at Marcus's study door at home, the memoir in her hands and a thoughtful expression on her face. Daddy, can I ask you something? Marcus pushed aside the documents he was analyzing. Of course, Princess. What is it? Sophia approached, leafing through the book until she reached a specific photo. Teenage Claire, with the Cornwall Sea in the background, a paintbrush in hand and an unfinished canvas on the easel. Did Mummy stop painting because you asked her to? The direct question caught Marcus by surprise. For a moment, he considered an evasive answer, something that would protect his image in his daughter's eyes. But in recent months he had learned that honesty, even when painful, was the only real path to healing. In part, yes, he finally admitted. I thought art wasn't a serious career. I wanted her to focus on business, on the life I imagined for us. He paused, searching for the right words. It was a mistake, Sophia. One of many I made. Sophia considered the answer seriously. But she was going to paint again, wasn't she? Uncle Robert said so. Yes, she was. After you were born, she started talking about it again. Bought materials, set up a small studio in the attic. Marcus smiled at the memory. I think you brought the artist back out in her. Sophia smiled, satisfied with the answer. So I'm continuing her work, like a special mission. Exactly, Marcus agreed, once again admiring his daughter's intuitive wisdom. That same night, later, when Sophia was asleep, Marcus found Robert in the mansion garden. His friend, for that was how he had come to think of him again, after all these months, had stopped by to drop off some documents and stayed for a drink. Sophia asked me if I asked Claire to stop painting, Marcus commented as they poured themselves whiskey on the veranda. Robert raised his eyebrows. And what did you tell her? The truth. That yes, I asked, and that it was a mistake. Courageous, Robert commented. Few fathers would admit such a mistake to their child. I'm trying to do things differently this time. To be the father Sophia deserves, not just the one I know how to be. Marcus contemplated the amber liquid in his glass. Claire would have been more honest with her from the start, I'm sure. Claire had that gift, Robert agreed, of seeing the truth and living it without masks. That's what I want for Sophia. For her to grow up knowing who she is, where she came from, that she has the right to choose her own path. The two men toasted silently to this shared wish, this mutual commitment to the future of the girl who had unexpectedly reunited them. When Christmas arrived, the Harrington mansion was unrecognizable. The austere and elegant decorations Lillian had preferred gave way to a colorful and cheerful setting, with handmade garlands, gingerbread cookies prepared by Mrs. Jenkins and Mrs. Nelson, who now alternated between the two houses, like shared grandmothers, and a nativity scene set up by Sophia with ceramic figures she had painted herself. The Christmas Eve dinner brought together not only the immediate family core, but also close friends, colleagues, Sophia's teachers, an extended family, built not by blood ties, but by conscious choices of closeness. Among the gifts exchanged, one stood out, a painting Robert had commissioned from a specialized art restorer. It was an unfinished canvas by Claire, found in the mansion's attic, the last work she had begun before she passed. The restorer had cleaned the canvas, fixed the loose parts, leaving the original work untouched. For you to continue, Robert said as he handed the gift to Sophia, as you said you wanted to do. The girl observed the canvas with reverence, a sunset in Cornwall, only sketched in vibrant colors, with blank spaces waiting to be filled. Can I really? Won't it ruin Mummy's painting? Your mother would love for you to complete her work, Marcus assured her. It's like a conversation across time between the two of you. Sophia hugged the canvas carefully. I'll do my best. I promise. The day after Christmas, while the city still slept under the effect of the celebrations, Sophia settled into her studio, her mother's unfinished canvas carefully positioned on the easel. With hesitant brushstrokes at first, then more confident ones, she began to fill in the blank spaces, continuing the work Claire had started years earlier. Marcus and Robert watched from the doorway, without interfering, witnessing the moment when past and present merged, when mother and daughter collaborated across time on a unique work. It's as if Claire is guiding her hand, Marcus commented in a low voice, noting how Sophia's brushstrokes perfectly harmonized with her mother's, as if following an invisible score. Perhaps she is, Robert replied simply. When spring arrived again, bringing blooming trumpet trees and longer days, the Claire Noronha Harrington Foundation inaugurated its first exhibition. Among the works of young talents discovered by the foundation, a special painting occupied the place of honor, The Sunset in Cornwall, started by Claire and completed by Sophia, two artists separated by time, united by blood and by love for the same landscape. The exhibition was a success, attracting critics, collectors, and art enthusiasts. But for Marcus and Robert, the true triumph lay in Sophia's expression as she guided visitors, explaining the techniques of the young artists, passionately defending the importance of art accessible to all. She has Claire's spirit, commented an old art professor who had known Sophia's mother in college. The same passion, the same conviction, and her father's determination, Robert added, and perhaps a little of her godfather's stubbornness. The professor chuckled, a formidable combination. That girl will go far. That night, after the successful exhibition, while Sophia slept exhausted but fulfilled, Marcus and Robert sat on the mansion's terrace, contemplating the starry sky over London, a rare sight in the polluted city, as if even the firmament wanted to celebrate the occasion. "I never imagined we'd get here," Marcus commented, raising his glass in a silent toast. "Claire knew," Robert replied. "Somehow she saw beyond time. She planted the seeds for all of this, for this moment. For this family," Marcus completed. "Different, improbable, but still a family." As the stars shone over the sleeping city, somewhere between heaven and earth, Claire smiled at her most perfect masterpiece, not a canvas, not a drawing, but the new arrangement she had created, a family rebuilt from the ashes of old grievances, united by love for a little girl who carried the best of everyone in her artist's heart. And Sophia, in her dreams, painted a new picture, a luminous future where the shadows of the past were not erased, but transformed into nuances that only enriched the canvas of the life that was just beginning to color.